If I were to make a list of my top qualities, neatness and foresight would be at the top of the list. My name is Freda Bambridge. I'm 78 years old, and I've always believed it's important to plan ahead. Many of my generation prefer paper calendars, but I switched to an electronic one a long time ago. The big numbers on the tablet screen are easier for my tired eyes to see. Today, the calendar shows Wednesday, which means it's time to check my investment portfolio. My apartment is small, a bedroom, a living room combined with a kitchen, and a small balcony where I grow basil and mint. The neighbors, mostly young families and students, would probably be surprised to learn that an elderly woman living in such modest conditions has 6 zeros in her accounts. It's not that I was hiding it on purpose. I just never saw the point in showing off wealth. Turning on my laptop, I look at the movement in the accounts. Investments in index funds show steady growth. Nothing extraordinary, but that's the kind of predictability I need. 4% annualized, reinvested quarterly, has built up an impressive amount of capital over the decades. My late husband Gordon often joked that I was the only accountant who treated personal finances with the same care as professional responsibilities. Gordon, it's been 10 years now, but I still find myself referring to him mentally. We met when I was 22 and he was 26. He was working as an engineer for a utility company, and I was just starting my career in the IRS. Our marriage wasn't like the passionate unions they write about in novels. Rather, it was a partnership of two practical people who found in each other support and understanding. We both valued order, reliability, and moderation. Quentyn, our only son, was born when I turned 28. It was a difficult pregnancy, and the doctors recommended not risking more, so we limited ourselves to one child. Maybe that's why we spoiled him so much. He was the center of our world. He got the best of everything. I turn back to the computer screen and open the real estate file. The main asset is a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood in South St. Paul. Gordon and I bought it for Quentyn 20 years ago when he married Hope. Technically, the house had always remained registered to me to reduce the tax burden, as I explained to my son at the time. He didn't mind, actually considering the house his own, and paid nominal rent, a token amount, more of a tribute than an actual payment. The last payment came last month, 2 weeks late. I didn't remind him. Why create tension? Our relationship is already strained to the breaking point. I take off my glasses and rub the bridge of my nose. In recent years, I've been thinking more and more about where Gordon and I went wrong. Our son has grown selfish and ungrateful. He only calls when he needs money or help with the kids. Quentyn's last visit to me was 3 months ago. He urgently needed a sum of money for car repairs. I gave it to him, of course. I always do. Outside the window, the rain begins to fall. Small drops drum on the glass, creating a cozy background noise. I close my laptop and go into the kitchen. Cooking for just myself isn't too exciting, but I maintain the ritual of a full meal. Today it's baked fish and vegetables and a glass of white wine. Gordon wouldn't approve of wine in the middle of the day, but he's not here to give his opinion. When we first met, Gordon was into photography. I still have an album of black and white photos from our youth. There I am, a slim girl with a sharp chin and an attentive gaze, in a strict accountant suit. There's Gordon and me, serious, planning for the future. There's little Quentyn. It's amazing how quickly childhood affection turns to adult coldness. After lunch, I'm going to my weekly book club meeting. 4 women my age are the only regular social circle I have left. We discuss literature, share news, and of course talk about children and grandchildren. I'm usually a bit terse on the subject. What to say about grandchildren you see 2 or 3 times a year? Olivia, 16, always on her cell phone, and Derek, 14, addicted to computer games. They are almost like strangers to me. I get home by 5 o'clock in the evening. The red light flashes on the answering machine. The message from Quentyn is short and dry. Mom, Derek needs a new computer for school. His old one is completely broken. $1,200. Call me back. No, how's it going? Or hope you're doing well. Just the amount and a demand to call back. I take off my coat, make some tea, and only then dial my son's number. Quentyn? It's Mom. You left a message about the computer. Finally, his voice sounds annoyed. I called 3 hours ago. Where were you? At a book club meeting. We were discussing Doris Wilcox's new novel. Who? He sounded impatient. It doesn't matter. Listen, Derek needs a computer right away. There's some new project at school, and his old laptop can't run the programs. $1,200 is a lot of money for a school computer, I say cautiously. Mom, it's not just a school computer. It's a special laptop for graphic design. Derek is showing an interest in creativity, and we need to support him. We is clearly me, not him and Hope. I sigh. Of course I'll help, but Quentyn, perhaps we should talk about budget and planning. Mom, please, he interrupts. Don't start lecturing me about finances. We're having a hard enough time as it is. Taxes are up, utility bills are up. Hope had to take on extra hours at the call center. I listened to his complaints in silence. None of them ever wondered how I lived on my civil service accountant's pension, how I saved and invested, how I denied myself small pleasures to secure the future, their future. All right, Quentyn, I'll wire the money tomorrow morning, I finally say. Good. His tone immediately changes to a more friendly one. And by the way, we're having a family dinner on Saturday. It's no big deal. We'll just hang out. You want to come? I know this invitation only came after I agreed to help out financially. But I'm saying yes anyway because maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe Olivia will get off the phone and talk about school. Maybe Derek will thank me for the computer. Maybe Hope won't roll her eyes at every comment I make. Of course I'll be there. What time? 6 o'clock. And, Mom? He doesn't talk for a second. Could you bring your apple pie? The kids love it. That's the real reason for the invitation. My apple pie, the recipe I got from my grandmother. It's the only thing my family thinks I do well. Okay, I'll bake the pie, I promise, and say goodbye. After the conversation, I sit for a long time with a cup of cooled tea. My mind is spinning with numbers, how much money I've given to Quentyn and his family over the last few years. A computer for Derek, a trip to summer camp for Olivia, car repairs, new living room furniture, college fees. The list is endless. The house we'd bought for her and Gordon had cost $250,000 at the time, all of our savings. Now its market value is much higher. The neighborhood has become prestigious. There is a good infrastructure. I regularly receive offers from realtors and developers interested in selling. The last such letter came last week. Bright Home Developments offered $650,000. As usual, I declined the offer. This house is for Quentyn and his family, their security and stability. In the morning, I transfer the money to my son's account and go shopping for food for the pie. At the supermarket, I meet Eunice, my neighbor in the stairwell, an energetic 73-year-old woman who has recently returned from a Mediterranean cruise. Freda, she waves at me cheerfully. How are you? Are you going to bake your famous pie? Yes, I'm going to visit my son, I answer, picking apples. How wonderful, Eunice smiles. My children are always busy, they rarely get to visit me. It's good that your Quentyn makes time for family get-togethers. I nod, not wanting to explain that I was only invited for the pie and after the promise of financial help. Eunice goes on and on about the cruise, the new friends she met there, her plans for a trip to Japan next spring. You should come with me, Freda, she suggests. You can't sit at home all the time waiting for the children to visit. Life is too short. I smile politely, but the thought of traveling seems absurd. Who will help Quentyn and his family if I leave? Who will bake the pie for Saturday night dinner? In the evening, rolling out the pie dough, I remember how much Gordon loved to watch the process. You do it with such precision. It's like you're doing a financial report, he'd say, and we'd both laugh. Gordon understood me, appreciated my practicality. I wonder what he would say about our son now. Would he approve of my continued financial support? Or would he advise me to finally teach Quentyn to be self-sufficient? The house we bought for our son was our pride. 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a backyard with a barbecue, everything Gordon and I could have dreamed of at his age. We wanted Quentyn to have what we didn't have. Maybe that was our mistake. I finished the pie and put it in the oven. Tomorrow I'll go to my son's house, smile, listen to their conversations in which there is no room for me, and hope that for once one of them will be genuinely happy to have me there, and not just my pie and my money. Saturday came unexpectedly quickly. I wore my best suit, a navy blue one with a pearl brooch, a gift from Gordon for our 30th anniversary. The pie turned out just the way kids like it, with a crisp crust and a juicy filling of caramelized apples and cinnamon. After packing it in a special container, I called a cab to Quentyn's house. The neighborhood where my son lived had changed beyond recognition in recent years. When Gordon and I bought a house there, it was a quiet suburb with inexpensive real estate. Now, modern cottages rise, manicured lawns compete with immaculate landscaping, and expensive cars line the driveways. Quentyn's house, two-story with a white facade and black roof, looks solid but not flashy. A cab stops at the gate. After paying the driver, I walk slowly down the path lined with decorative stone. Hope insisted on replacing it 2 years ago. The old one seemed outdated and provincial to her. I paid half the cost of the work. Olivia, my oldest granddaughter, opens the door. Tall, with straight dark hair and a perpetually disgruntled expression, she looks more like her mother than Quentyn. "Hello, Grandma," she says without much enthusiasm, not taking her eyes off the screen of her smartphone. "Hello, dear. How's school going?" "Fine." Olivia shrugs and steps aside, letting me into the house. The hallway smells like fresh-baked goods and something spicy. Apparently, Hope is experimenting with Asian food. She's into cooking shows and is constantly trying new recipes, proudly showing off her accomplishments on social media. "Mommy's here!" Olivia yells toward the kitchen and immediately disappears upstairs, leaving me alone in the hallway. I carefully place the pie container on the console by the entrance and take off my coat. No one rushes to help me. Hanging it on the hook, I fix my hair in front of the mirror and notice the new wrinkles around my eyes. Time is merciless. In the kitchen, Hope bustles around the stove. She's 20 years younger than Quentyn, a bright blonde with sharp features and a loud voice. When she sees me, she nods without interrupting the phone clamped between her ear and shoulder. And I told her it was totally unacceptable. Can you imagine that? In the 21st century. Hope pauses to stir something in the skillet. "I'll call you later, Courtney. The mother-in-law is here." She says the word mother-in-law with a faint note of irritation, as if it were an unpleasant duty rather than a kinship. "Hello, Hope. What can I do for you?" I ask, trying to be helpful. "Nothing, thanks. I'm almost done," she replies, turning away from the stove. Quentyn is in the garage, tinkering with the new grill. Derek is in his room, playing. Dinner will be ready in half an hour. I take the hint I'm not expected in the kitchen. I grab my pie and head into the living room. Everything here has changed since my last visit. A new couch, a glass and chrome coffee table, an abstract painting on the wall. None of the furniture Gordon and I helped pick out is left. I sit in the chair by the window and watch the backyard. There's Quentyn fiddling with a huge grill, the latest model by the looks of it. I wonder how much it cost. And why haven't I gotten a call asking me to help with this purchase? After a few minutes, Quentyn spots me through the window and waves. I smile and wave back. He looks tired, circles under his eyes, wrinkles on his forehead, slight gray on his temples. My boy is getting old. He was so cheerful as a child, with an infectious laugh and endless questions. Where has all that gone? Quentyn walks into the house through the back door, wiping his hands with a towel. "Hi, Mom," he says, leaning over to kiss my cheek. He smells like cologne and a little bit like car oil. "How was your trip?" "Fine, thanks. I took a cab." "You could have called and I would have picked you up," he says, but we both know that's just being polite. Last time I asked him to pick me up, he canceled at the last minute because of an urgent meeting. "Didn't mean to interrupt," I reply. "I see you have a new grill?" "Yes, it's a beast of a grill." Quentyn perks up. "Infrared burners, adjustable temperature, even Wi-Fi. You can control it from your smartphone." "Must be expensive, huh?" I ask the question cautiously. His face changes immediately, enthusiasm replacing tension. "Mom, you know we're in a difficult financial situation. But sometimes you have to invest in the quality of your life. Not everything is measured in money." This phrase sounds particularly ironic considering how often he comes to me for financial help. But I don't say anything. Why spoil a rare family reunion? "Of course, darling. I was just asking." He nods, clearly not wanting to continue the conversation. "I'm going to go change for dinner. Has Derek seen his new computer yet?" Yeah, it was delivered yesterday. He loves it. Quentyn smiles slightly. Thank you. We couldn't afford it right now. Always happy to help, I say sincerely. Despite all the difficulties in our relationship, I love my son and want his family to be happy. Quentyn goes upstairs, and I'm left alone in the living room. After a while, I hear footsteps. It's Derek coming down the stairs, never taking his eyes off the tablet in his hands. Hi, Grandma, he mumbles, not even looking at me. Hello, Derek. How do you like the new computer? It's fine, he shrugs, just like Olivia did an hour ago. Thanks. Why don't you tell me what kind of projects you're using it for? I try to make conversation. Derek finally raises his eyes from the screen and looks at me with mild irritation. Grandma, it's hard to explain. You wouldn't understand, he says without anger, just stating a fact, but it's no less hurtful. I could try, I insist. After all, I used to work with computer systems at the IRS. That was 100 years ago, he snorts. Technology has changed. Before I can answer, Hope's voice comes from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. Dinner's ready. Derek disappears immediately, and I rise slowly from my chair, feeling my knees ache. Age is taking its toll. The atmosphere at the table is tense. Hope is serving some Asian dish that's too spicy for my stomach. I gingerly push my plate away and settle for a salad. You don't like my cooking? Hope asks defiantly. It's just that my doctor told me to avoid spicy foods, I explain. You could have warned me beforehand, she rolls her eyes. I would have made something special for you. I doubt the sincerity of that statement, but I nod gratefully. The conversation at the table revolves around school, Quentyn's job, Hope's new acquaintances. I'm mostly silent, occasionally asking questions to which I get one-word answers. The grandkids are on their phones, despite the formal ban on gadgets at the table. Olivia, how are your music lessons going? I ask, remembering that I paid for her piano lessons last year. I quit, she replies without looking up. It's boring. It's a shame. You had a knack for it. Mom, don't start, Quentyn intervenes. Children should have the right to choose. Of course, I agree. Just wondering. After dinner, I help Hope clear the table, though she'd obviously prefer to do it herself. The kids disappear to their rooms, and Quentyn settles in the living room with a bottle of beer and some sports channel on. Hope, I noticed the new furniture, I say, stacking the plates neatly in the dishwasher. Very modern. Yeah, finally got rid of that old stuff, she smiles for the first time all night. You know, it was a little embarrassing to have guests with furniture that looks so outdated. By old, she means the furniture Gordon and I helped them pick out 15 years ago. Quality, handmade wooden pieces that were supposed to last for decades. I understand, I say neutrally. Tastes change. Exactly, Hope nods vigorously. Quentyn resisted at first, but I insisted. In our circle, it's important to conform to a certain level. In your circle? You know, friends, co-workers. We throw a lot of parties. We have to maintain our image. I never get invited to these parties. I guess I don't fit their image. After I finish the dishes, I go back to the living room. Quentyn is already dozing off in front of the TV. I sit down in the chair across from him and watch him. In his sleep, his face smooths out, almost like it was when he was a child. I remember reading to him before bed, teaching him how to ride his bike, how proud I was of his first successes in school. Hope enters the living room with 2 glasses of wine, one of which he holds out to me, an unexpected gesture of friendliness. Quentyn never lasts more than 20 minutes in front of the TV, she says with unexpected warmth in her voice. Too tired to work. He's always been like that, I reply, taking the glass. When I was a kid, he'd fall asleep at dinner if it was a busy day. We sit in awkward silence, sipping our wine. Finally, Hope asks, "How do you like your apartment? Isn't it too lonely?" I'm used to it. I shrug. After Gordon died, I had to adapt. Quentyn and I worry sometimes. She pauses, as if searching for words. Still, a lonely old woman. What if something happens? Who will help? I have an emergency button, I answer, and the neighbors are attentive. It's still not the same. Hope shakes her head. You know, we saw a report on modern nursing homes the other day. They're not the horrible places you see in the movies. Rather, they're comfortable communities for the elderly. There's medical care around the clock, socializing, and entertainment. I'm getting tense. That's what it is. I prefer my independence, I say firmly. Of course you do, she agrees hastily. It's just sometimes it's good to consider your options, especially given the financial situation. What financial situation? I raise an eyebrow. Well, apartment maintenance, medical expenses, all those things are just getting more expensive. And your pension. She waves her hand indefinitely. My pension is sufficient for my needs, I answer coldly. And I have savings. Hope blushes slightly. I'm sorry if that sounded insensitive. We're just looking out for you. At that moment, Quentyn wakes up and stretching asks, What are you talking about? Your wife is wondering if I want to move into a nursing home. I say bluntly. Mom? Quentyn straightens up in his chair. Hope is just concerned about your well-being. We both are. And my finances too, apparently. I add dryly. What does finances have to do with it? Quentyn frowns, but there's something that looks like guilt in his eyes. I don't know, ask your wife. The atmosphere in the room turns icy. Hope stands up abruptly. I'm going to go check on the kids, she says, and quickly leaves the living room. Quentyn and I are alone. He looks at me with annoyance. Why did you do that? Hope meant well. Quentyn, I say quietly but firmly. I'm not going to a nursing home. I'm sane. I have enough money, and I prefer to live on my own. No one's insisting. He looks away. It's just that, some assets could be put to better use. What assets? Well, the house for one. He waves his hand around. Technically, it's still registered to you, even though we've lived here for 20 years. That creates certain complications. What kind of complications? Tax, legal? He falters. We can't, for example, get a proper mortgage to refinance or a big loan against the house. That's what it is. They want the house, fully, officially, legally. And they want me out of the way, preferably in a place where I'll be supervised and can't interfere with their financial plans. I'll think about it, I say in a neutral tone, though I'm seething with resentment and anger inside. Quentyn visibly relaxes. Thanks, Mom. We can discuss it with a lawyer to make sure that your interests are protected too. I nod silently, not trusting my voice. That's when Derek comes flying into the living room. Dad! Dad! I've been approved for a loan for a new gaming computer, he exclaims excitedly. What loan? Quentyn frowns. You're 14. You can't take out loans. It's through a special program for teenagers with a parental guarantee, Derek explains. It's only $2,000 for 2 years, very small payments. Derek, I bought you a computer last week, I interject. My grandson looks at me as if he's just noticed my presence. That one's for school, Grandma. This one is for streaming and cybersports. That's different. We'll talk about that later, Quentyn cuts him off. Go to your room. Derek walks away, muttering something about inadequate ancestors, and I feel the last vestiges of warmth leave me. This isn't my family anymore. I'm an ATM and a nuisance to them at the same time. I have to go, I say, standing up. I'll call a cab. Already? Quentyn looks surprised. We haven't had your pie yet. Save it for the kids, I say. Tell Hope I said goodbye. Quentyn walks me to the door. He gives me an awkward hug goodbye. Mom, no offense. We really mean well. I nod, unable to speak. I get into a cab and give her my address. On the way home, I look out the window at the city floating by. Evening lights, people rushing about, young couples holding hands. Life goes on. At home, the first thing I do is check the mail. Among the flyers and bills, I find another letter from Bright Home Developments. Usually, I throw them away without reading them, but today, for some reason, I open the envelope. Dear Mrs. Bambridge, the letter says, we are pleased to inform you that our company is raising the offer to buy your property to $675,000. The neighborhood where your house is located is a priority for our new project, a modern residential complex with developed infrastructure. Please consider our offer and contact us at the number provided. I put the letter aside and sit in silence for a long time. $675,000, a sum that could provide me with a trouble-free life for the rest of my days. The travel Eunice was talking about, a new place in a better neighborhood, freedom from having to save money on everything. And what does Quentyn get? Eviction and having to find a new place to live. The shock of realizing that the house he thought was his was sold without his knowledge. I shake my head, pushing those thoughts away. No, I can't do that to my own son. No matter how ungrateful he is, it's too cruel. But I don't throw the letter away. Instead, I fold it neatly and tuck it away in my desk drawer with the deeds to the house. Just in case. It's been a week since that unfortunate family dinner. The letter from Bright Home Development sat in my desk drawer like a time bomb. I periodically pulled it out, reread it, and put it back, unable to make a decision. Thursday morning, the phone rang. Quentyn. My heart habitually twitched. He usually only called when he needed something. Mom, hi, how are you? His voice sounded suspiciously cheerful. I'm fine, thanks. How are you? I'm fine. He paused. Hey, Hope and I were thinking, why don't you come up here this weekend? Talk about what we talked about last time. The nursing home? I was straightforward. Mom, don't call it that. He sounded annoyed. It's an independent living community for the elderly. That's a whole other thing. And what exactly do you want to discuss? Well, options. We found a nice place not too far from us. We could take a drive, take a look, and we can talk about the house, the deeds. I sighed. Quentyn's insistence was starting to worry me. Something told me it wasn't just about my well-being. Okay, I finally agreed. When should I be there? Saturday at lunchtime. I'll pick you up around 1 o'clock. It's a deal. After the conversation, I sat at the window for a long time, watching the life of the street below. School children with backpacks, office workers hurrying to lunch, a young mother with a stroller. All of them were immersed in their own concerns, unaware of my dilemma. The thought of selling the house out from under my own son's nose seemed monstrous to me. But every day it became clearer that Quentyn and Hope saw me as a liability, an obstacle to their financial plans. They'd already decided my fate without asking my opinion. I pulled out the photo album, the one with the black and white pictures of our youth. Here was Gordon holding the newborn Quentyn in his arms, his face glowing with happiness. Here I am teaching my son how to ride a bicycle, supporting him by the seat. Here's our first family hike, Quentyn proudly carrying a small backpack. When did things change? At what point did my loving son turn into a man willing to send his mother to a nursing home to take over her property? On Saturday, Quentyn arrived exactly at 1 p.m. as promised. I was ready, dressed in a simple but elegant suit. Gordon always said it was better to have difficult conversations in nice clothes. It gave you confidence. You look great, Mom, Quentyn remarked as he helped me into the car. Is that a new suit? No, I just haven't worn it in a while, I replied. Actually, it was a new suit, but I didn't see the point in discussing it. On the way, Quentyn was unusually talkative, talking about his work, about some vacation plans. I listened half listening, mentally preparing myself for the upcoming conversation. When we arrived, Hope greeted us with feigned joy. Freda, I'm so happy to see you. She even gave me a hug, which was rare. Come in, I've made your favorite tea. In the living room, the table was already set. Cookies, cakes, fruit, and an inconspicuous file on the edge of the table. Everything had been orchestrated to perfection. Where are the children? I asked, noticing the unusual silence in the house. Olivia has rehearsal at the school theater, and Derek's at a friend's house, Hope said, pouring tea. I thought it might be more comfortable for us to talk about grown-up things. I nodded. It was for the best. I didn't want my grandchildren to witness what might happen. After a brief small talk, Quentyn got down to business. Mom, Hope and I found a great place for you. He opened a website on his tablet and turned the screen toward me. Sun Terraces. It's a modern complex for seniors. Everyone has their own apartment, but there are common areas for socializing, sports, and creative activities. 24-hour medical care, 3 meals a day. Sounds like a hotel, I remarked. Better, Hope echoed. It's a real community. There are concerts, lectures, excursions. Many people say that Sun Terraces has given them a second youth. How much does it cost? I asked bluntly. Quentyn and Hope looked at each other. Not cheap, Quentyn admitted. But we've thought of everything. If we put the house in our name, we can get a loan against it and pay for you to live there. So you want me to sign over a house worth over $500,000 to you so you can put me in a nursing home for my own money? Mom, Quentyn raised his voice. It's not a nursing home, and it's not your money. We've been living in this house for 20 years, paying for it, taking care of it. In all fairness, it should have been ours a long time ago. You pay a token rent well below market value, I reminded him, and the house was bought with money my father and I had saved up all our lives. There you go again. Quentyn was beginning to lose patience. It's always about money. You think we want to cheat you? We care about you. You live alone in a small apartment without proper care. I have everything I need, I answered calmly, and I prefer to live on my own. You're 78 years old. Hope couldn't take it anymore. How much longer can you live alone? A year, two, and then what? Call us in the middle of the night asking for help? I never call you for help, I pointed out. It's usually the other way around. There was a heavy silence. Quentyn turned purple, clenching his fists. You know what, Mom? He spoke at last, enunciating every word. You've always been stingy, always counting every dime. Dad was the same way. You saved up, denied yourself everything for what? So you could sit on your money like dragons on treasure? We saved to secure your future, I answered quietly. So that you could go to a good college, so that you could have your own house. And you never let go of the reins of power, he interrupted. The house is technically yours. You control the money. Even now, when I'm 50 years old, you treat me like a child. If you weren't constantly asking for money for new computers, furniture, trips, maybe I'd treat you differently, I said, feeling the irritation I'd been holding back for a long time rising in me. There, again! Quentyn jumped up from his chair. Always reproaching us for helping you. And you know what? We can manage without your handouts. And without your control. Hope tried to calm him down with a hand on his shoulder, but he shook it off. No, that's enough. I'm tired of tiptoeing around her. He turned to me. You know what the kids say? That they're afraid of you, that you look at them like they're wasting your precious money. I never... And Olivia gave up piano not because she was bored, but because you kept reminding her how much lessons cost. He continued, not listening to me. And Derek hides in his room when you come over because you once told him off for a broken tablet, which, by the way, we bought, not you. I remained silent, shocked by this flood of accusations. Did I really behave this way with my grandchildren? Did they really fear me? Quentyn, calm down, Hope tried to intervene. No, let him know the truth. He turned to me, his face contorted with rage. We don't want to live under your control anymore. Either pay normal market rent or get out and stay out of our lives. There was dead silence in the room. Hope turned pale, covering her mouth with her hand. Quentyn seemed shocked by his own words. Mom, that's not what I meant, he began. But I was already standing up, gathering my purse. No, Quentyn, that's exactly what you meant, I said calmly, though inside I was shaking with resentment and anger. And you know what? You're right. It's your life and I shouldn't interfere with it. I headed for the exit. No one tried to stop me. Mom! Quentyn shouted when I was already at the door. How are you going to get home? I'll call a cab, I answered without turning around. Don't worry. I walked out of the house, closing the door carefully behind me, and only then did I allow myself to take a deep breath, trying to deal with my emotions. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call a cab, but instead I dialed another number. Harborne Inn? I'd like to make a reservation, starting today for a week. Half an hour later, I was in a cab to the hotel. My thoughts were jumbled, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going back to my apartment tonight. I needed space, time to think, to make a decision. The Harborne Inn turned out to be a cozy hotel on the outskirts of town, far enough away from Quentyn's house that we wouldn't accidentally cross paths. The room was simple but comfortable. A bed, a desk, and a chair by the window overlooking a small park. I unpacked the small bag I'd thoughtfully brought with me, knowing the conversation might not go as planned. I carefully hung my clothes in the closet, pulled out my toiletries, and arranged my medications on the table. Routine actions helped me calm down, put my thoughts in order. In the evening, I went down to the hotel restaurant and ordered a light dinner. At a neighboring table sat an elderly couple about my age. They were talking quietly, occasionally touching each other's hands. Their relationship was warm and caring, accumulated by decades of living together. I involuntarily thought of Gordon. What would he say now? Would he support me or advise me to forgive my son? Gordon had always been the peacemaker in the family, smoothing over the sharp edges of my bluntness. But even he couldn't ignore the way Quentyn was treating me. After dinner, I went back to my room and pulled an envelope from my bag with an offer from Bright Home Developments. $675,000, a sum that could change my life, and Quentyn's. The next morning, I called the number on the letter. Bright Home Developments? How may I help you? A woman's voice answered. My name is Freda Bambridge. I received your offer to purchase the house and would like to discuss the details. One moment, Mrs. Bambridge, I'll connect you to an account manager. A few seconds later, a man with an energetic voice came on the line. Lloyd Pritchard, account manager. I'm glad you're interested in our offer, Mrs. Bambridge. I'm just considering my options, I clarified. I have a few questions. Of course you do. First of all, my family is currently living in the house. What are the terms for them? We usually give the previous tenants 30 days to move out after the deal is finalized, Pritchard explained. But it's negotiable. We can extend that to 60 days if necessary. And then what happens to the house? Our company plans to build a modern residential complex on this site and neighboring areas. The old houses will be demolished. I swallowed. Demolished. The house that was part of our family history will simply disappear. If we agreed, how quickly could the deal close? With all the paperwork in place and no legal obstacles, 2 to 3 weeks. We have an expedited process for priority properties, and your house is in that zone. We discussed a few more details, and I agreed to meet at their office the next day. After hanging up the phone, I sat staring out the window for a long time. What am I doing? Am I really ready to sell the house where my son and his family live? Do I really want to cause them this much pain? On the other hand, wasn't it Quentyn just yesterday yelling at me to pay the rent or get out? Weren't he and Hope planning to put me in a nursing home to take possession of my property? I pulled out the photo album I'd brought with me. Little Quentyn on the swings, Quentyn with his first bike, Quentyn in his graduation suit. When did my boy turn into a man who only sees me as a source of money and a burden? The next day I met with Bright Home Developments at their state-of-the-art downtown office. Lloyd Pritchard turned out to be a young man of about 35, wearing an impeccable suit and a practiced smile. Mrs. Bambridge, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. He shook my hand vigorously. Allow me to introduce our lawyer, Miss Allison Wilde. She will explain all the legal aspects of the deal. Miss Wilde, a serious middle-aged woman, nodded at me and laid out the files on the table. Before we begin, I said, I want to make one more thing clear. The tenants of the house are my son and his family. They must not know about the sale until the last moment. Is that possible? Pritchard and Wilde looked at each other. Technically, yes, the lawyer replied. Since the house officially belongs only to you, you have the right to dispose of it without notifying the tenants. However, once the deal is finalized, we will be obliged to send a formal notice of change of ownership and the need to vacate the premises. Is that inevitable? I'm afraid so, but we can send the notice on the last legally possible day if you insist. I nodded. Let's do that. For the next 2 hours, we discussed the details of the deal. I read each document carefully, asking questions, making edits. My career as an accountant has taught me to scrutinize every paper, especially when it comes to large sums of money. You're very thorough, Mrs. Bambridge, Pritchard said with slight surprise. Most of our clients of your age prefer to trust us with the details. I spent 37 years as an accountant for the Internal Revenue Service, Mr. Pritchard, I replied. The habit of checking numbers was more ingrained in me than wrinkles. After the meeting, I didn't go back to the hotel right away. I wandered around the city, thinking about my decision. It still seemed monstrous, but fair at the same time. Quentyn and his family had been taking advantage of my kindness for years, treating me as a source of endless financial contributions. Maybe it was time to teach them a lesson. That evening in my room, I reread all the documents again. The terms were favorable. Full payment immediately upon completion of the deal, no hidden fees or additional costs. Tomorrow I had to sign the preliminary agreement and start the process of transferring ownership. I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, imagining Quentyn's reaction when he received the eviction notice. His shock, his disbelief, his anger, and the inevitable call to me demanding an explanation. What will I tell him? That it's his own fault, that it's revenge for years of neglect, or will I just tell him the truth, that I've disposed of my property as I saw fit? In the morning, with circles under my eyes from a sleepless night, I went to the Bright Home Development's office. Miss Wilde was already waiting for me with the paperwork. "Are you sure you want to go on, Mrs. Bainbridge?" she asked, noticing my condition. "You look troubled." "I am sure," I answered firmly, and signed the preliminary agreement. The next 2 weeks passed like a blur. I renewed my hotel reservation, hardly left the room, avoiding the possibility of accidentally meeting Quentyn or any of his acquaintances. I turned off my phone after the 5th missed call from my son. I wasn't ready to talk to him until the deal was finalized. Finally, the day came for the signing of the main contract. I put on my best suit, gathered my hair into a neat bun, and went to the notary's office where the meeting was to take place. Lloyd Pritchard and Allison Wilde were already there, along with the notary and the bank representative. The formalities took about an hour. I signed the sales contract, handed over all the necessary documents, and received confirmation of the bank transfer to my account, $675,000, a sum that now belonged to me indivisibly, a sum that gave me freedom and independence for the rest of my life. "Congratulations on a successful closing, Mrs. Bainbridge," Pritchard said, shaking my hand. "The notice to the tenants will be mailed tomorrow as we agreed." I nodded, not trusting my voice. It had been done. There was no turning back. Back at the hotel, I turned on my phone for the first time in 2 weeks. 27 missed calls from Quentyn, 5 from Hope, even 2 from Olivia. Lots of messages ranging from concerned to angry. "Mom, where are you? We're worried. Call right now. If you don't answer, I'll call the police. Grandma, please let me know you're okay." The last message was from yesterday. "Mom, I'm sorry for what I said. Please give me a call. We need to talk." "It's too late, Quentyn. Too late for an apology." I turned my phone off and walked over to the window. The sun was setting, coloring the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter of my life, and my son's. I felt no gloating or triumph, just a strange sense of release, as if the heavy weight I had been carrying for years had finally fallen from my shoulders. Yes, what I had done was cruel. But sometimes cruelty is the only way to break up a toxic relationship. Quentyn will never grow up if I continue to indulge his demands and forgive his ingratitude. Tomorrow he'll get an eviction notice, and then the real storm will begin. The morning after signing the papers, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. After having breakfast at the hotel restaurant, I decided it was time to move on, both literally and figuratively. The first thing I did was to call Eunice, my housemate. "Freda," she exclaimed when she heard my voice. "Where have you been? I went to your house several times, but no one opened the door." I was beginning to worry. "I decided to make some changes in my life," I answered. "Eunice, remember you talked about going to Japan next spring?" "Of course. I've already booked the trip. Why? Is the offer still on the table? About me joining?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Freda Bainbridge, you surprise me," Eunice finally said with a laugh. "Of course the offer stands. I'll be happy to travel with you. But what's the matter? You've never been interested in traveling before." "It's a long story. I'll tell you when I meet you," I said evasively. "Right now, I need your help. I'm looking for a new apartment, preferably in a good neighborhood. You used to work in real estate, right?" 25 years at Rising Star Realty, Eunice said proudly. "I still have connections. Let me see. You want to rent or buy?" "Rent first, and then we'll see." "Budget?" I thought about it for a second. I could afford a lot more now than I could before. "Up to $3,000 a month," I said, feeling a strange pleasure in being able to say that much. "Wow," Eunice whistled. "Did you win the lottery or something?" "Or what?" I said evasively. "Will you help me?" "Sure. Give me a couple of days, I'll look at the options and call you back." After talking to Eunice, I decided to do my closet. If I was starting a new life, I had to look accordingly. I spent a few hours at the nearest mall choosing new clothes, brighter and more modern than I usually wore. I bought 3 new suits, several blouses, comfortable shoes, and even a wide-brimmed hat, the kind I had always wanted but thought too extravagant for me. At the jewelry store, I stood for a long time in front of a display of pearl necklaces. Gordon had once wanted to give me real pearls for my anniversary, but I'd talked him out of it, thinking it was a waste. Now, looking at the pearls shimmering in the light of the lamps, I thought I deserved this little luxury. "I'll take this one," I said to the saleswoman, pointing to an elegant necklace of large pearls with a silver clasp. "Excellent choice, ma'am," she smiled. "For a special occasion?" "For a new life," I replied, pulling out my credit card. When I returned to the hotel with the shopping bags, I found 3 missed calls, all from Quentyn, so the eviction notice had already been delivered. I didn't bother calling back. Instead, I called the law firm of Gray, Patterson and Associates, which I found through a recommendation from one of my book club members. "I need a real estate and family law consultation," I told the receptionist, "preferably with an experienced attorney." "Mr. Patterson will be able to see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning," she replied after a short pause. "Will that suit you?" "Perfectly," I agreed and dictated my details. As soon as I finished talking, the phone rang again. Quentyn. This time I decided to answer it. "Yes?" I said calmly. "Mom?" My son sounded panicked. "What the hell is going on here? I got some stupid eviction notice. They say the house has been sold. This is some kind of mistake, isn't it?" "It's not a mistake, Quentyn," I replied in the same even tone. "The house has indeed been sold." There was a deafening silence, and then, "What? You sold our house? Without our knowledge? Are you crazy?" "The house has always belonged to me," I reminded him. "You told me to get out? I just took my possessions with me." "That's not what I meant," he shouted. "You could not realize that. It was just an emotional moment. People say different things in anger. People often say what they really think when they're angry," I said. "And what you said made a lot of sense to me." "Mom, this is crazy." His voice shook with rage and despair. "We have a contract. We've been paying rent for 20 years. Symbolic rent, well below market value. And the contract clearly states that the owner has the right to sell the property at any time with 30 days notice to the tenants. I'm sure you got a copy of the contract 20 years ago. You can't do this to us. To your own family. Where are we gonna live? What am I gonna tell the kids?" 30 days is plenty of time to find a new place to live," I replied. "With the proceeds from the sale, I can help you with a down payment on a new house if you want." "Are you kidding me?" Quentyn roared. "First you throw us out on the street and then you offer to help us, you monster!" His words should have hurt me, but strangely I felt only tired. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Quentyn." "It's not over yet," he threatened. "I'll get a lawyer. We'll sue. You can't just throw us out of the house we've lived in for 20 years. "Do what you think is right," I said. "But I'm warning you, it's legally perfect. You'll only waste money on lawyers." "I'll see you in court," he said, and hung up. I put the phone down slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My heart was beating steady. I had expected this conversation to be much more traumatic for me, but instead of pain, I felt only a strange relief, as if I had finally shed a heavy burden. Eunice called back in the evening, full of enthusiasm. "Freda, I have something amazing for you. A 1-bedroom apartment in Riverside Plaza, a new complex overlooking the river, concierge, underground parking, fitness center, all the amenities. And best of all, it's available right now." "Sounds great," I said. "When can I see it?" "Tomorrow at noon?" I made an appointment with the agent. "That's great. I'll meet you there." The next morning began with a visit to the lawyer's office. The office of Gray, Patterson and Associates was located in an old building in the center of town. Frederick Patterson appeared to be a personable man in his 60s, with a neat gray beard and a shrewd eye. "Mrs. Bambridge." He shook my hand. "What can I do for you?" I summarized the situation, the sale of the house, the possibility of legal claims from my son, the need to protect my interests. Patterson listened attentively, occasionally making notes in his notebook. "Let me be clear," he said when I was finished. "Was the house deeded solely to you? Your son wasn't a co-owner or beneficiary?" "It was solely in my name. Quentyn paid a token rent, but he had no ownership rights." What about verbal promises? Did you ever say the house would be inherited or gifted to him? I wondered. I might have mentioned in general terms that all my possessions would eventually go to him as the sole heir. But I hadn't made any specific promises about the house. Patterson nodded. In that case, legally your position is very strong. The house was your property. You had every right to sell it. The only thing your son could use is the argument of implied contract or oral promises, but without witnesses and documents, that's a weak position. So if he sues, he has little chance? Very little, Patterson confirmed. But litigation can be lengthy and emotionally exhausting, especially when family conflicts are involved. I'd recommend trying to reach a compromise. What kind of compromise? Perhaps financial assistance in finding new housing, or an extension of the eviction period. Something that will soften the blow and show that you are not acting out of pure revenge. I thought about what he said. I had already offered to help with a down payment on a new home. He rejected that offer. Give him time to cool down, Patterson advised. Shock and anger are natural reactions. In a few days, he might be more receptive to reasonable offers. We discussed a few more legal nuances, and I signed a legal services agreement. I now had an official representative who could take over communication with Quentyn's attorneys if it came to that. After meeting with the lawyer, I went to look at the apartment. Eunice was already waiting for me at the entrance to Riverside Plaza, a modern glass and concrete building on the banks of the river. Isn't it impressive? She asked, pointing to the facade. Built only 2 years ago, all modern technology, eco-friendly materials. The real estate agent, a young woman named Veronica, led us through a spacious lobby with a marble floor and live plants to the elevators. The apartment is on the 10th floor, she said. One of the best views in the building. The apartment was exactly as I dreamed it would be. A spacious living room with panoramic windows overlooking the river, a modern kitchen with all the necessary appliances, a bedroom with a walk-in closet and bathroom, and a separate office that could serve as a guest bedroom if necessary. What do you think? Eunice asked when we had looked through all the rooms. I'll take it, I answered without hesitation. When can I move in? Veronica glowed. As soon as the contract is signed and the deposit is paid, maybe in a couple of days. We discussed the details, and I agreed to a 1-year contract with an option to renew. The rent was a hefty $2,800 a month, but I could afford it now. After leaving Riverside Plaza, Eunice and I went to a cafe nearby. It was time to tell her what had happened. So, she said as we sat down at a table by the window. Now, can you explain how you got these opportunities all of a sudden? And why you haven't been home in weeks? I took a deep breath and began to tell her about the conflict with Quentyn, about his words, about the decision to sell the house, about my stay at the hotel. Eunice listened without interrupting, only occasionally nodding or shaking her head. You were tough, she said when I was done. But frankly, I understand. Your son obviously took you for granted. Sometimes people need a serious shock to make them reconsider their behavior. You don't think what I did was wrong? I asked, surprised by her reaction. Who am I to judge? Eunice shrugged her shoulders. My kids are all over the country calling once a month. Maybe if I'd been more decisive in my time, our relationship would be better now. Anyway, the house was your property and you had every right to use it as you saw fit. Her support meant more to me than I expected. All day I had been subconsciously preparing myself for judgment, for the fact that even the people closest to me would find my act unnecessarily cruel. Eunice's support was like a breath of fresh air. For the next few days, I was busy organizing the move. I had to pack up my old apartment, buy new furniture, order deliveries, redirect mail. In the hustle and bustle, I almost ignored the calls from Quentyn, which became more and more insistent. Finally, when I was almost done moving, I decided to answer. Yes, Quentyn, I said, preparing myself for a flood of accusations. Mom, his voice sounded surprisingly calm. We need to talk, in person. About what? About the house, of course. About what you've done, about our future. I've been thinking, maybe Patterson was right, and Quentyn, having cooled down, was ready to discuss a compromise. Okay, I agreed. When and where? Tomorrow? Marco's downtown? 11 o'clock? It's a deal. I arrived at the cafe at the appointed hour wearing one of my new suits and a pearl necklace around my neck. I wanted to look confident and independent, no more battered older woman to manipulate. Quentyn was already waiting at a table at the back of the room. He looked drained and tired, circles under his eyes, a wrinkled shirt, sloppy stubble. Next to him sat an unfamiliar man in an austere suit with a leather briefcase on his lap, obviously a lawyer. Mom. Quentyn stood up as I approached. He made a motion like he wanted to hug me, but changed his mind and just pointed to a chair. This is Gregory Howard, my lawyer. Nice to meet you, I said, shaking Howard's hand. But I didn't realize this was going to be a formal meeting. Perhaps I should bring my lawyer? That's not necessary, Quentyn said hastily. Gregory is just here as a consultant. In that case, I'd rather record our conversation, I said, pulling out my phone and turning on the recorder. For my own peace of mind. Quentyn and Howard looked at each other. As you wish, my son agreed reluctantly. So what did you want to talk about? Howard coughed and opened his briefcase. Mrs. Bainbridge, after careful consideration of the situation, we have concluded that the sale of the house, though legally sound, did not take into account the moral obligations to your son and his family. Moral obligations? I interjected. Exactly. Your son and his family have lived in this house for 20 years, have invested a considerable amount of money in it in the form of repairs, improvements, fixing it up, which I have largely financed, I remarked. However, Howard continued, the sudden eviction creates a critical situation for them. They don't have time to find suitable housing, to move their belongings, to adapt. Then there's the issue of reputational damage. How do they explain to friends, colleagues, why they have to move in such a hurry? They could tell the truth, I suggested, that they were living in a house that didn't belong to them, and the owner decided to sell it. Howard pressed his lips together. Mrs. Bainbridge, we're offering a compromise. Your son is willing to waive his legal claims if you agree to the following terms. An extension of the eviction to 90 days and compensation of $100,000 to purchase a new home. I stared at them, not believing my ears. Did they really think they could make conditions on me after what had happened? Mr. Howard, I said calmly. My offer is as follows. The eviction period remains the same, 30 days from the date of the notice. I am prepared to provide an interest-free loan of $50,000 for a down payment on a new home, to be repaid within 5 years. This is unacceptable, Quentyn exclaimed. Mom, you don't understand. We can't find a suitable house in 30 days. The kids are in the middle of the school year. Hope has important projects at work. You could rent a temporary place, I suggested. An apartment or a house until you find a permanent place. With what money? He exploded. You took our financial safety net. I sold my property, I corrected him, and I'm offering you a loan to help with the move. A loan? Quentyn laughed bitterly. You got $675,000 for a house we thought was ours, and you're offering to lend us a measly $50,000? Which you'll have to pay back, Howard added incredulously. Exactly, I confirmed. That's my final offer. Quentyn flushed with anger. You monster! He spat. You throw your own son out on the street. What did I ever do to you? Why did you do this to me? For 20 years of neglect, I said quietly. For treating me like an ATM machine. For letting my wife and kids treat me without respect. For planning to put me in a nursing home to take possession of my assets. That's not true, he shouted, attracting the attention of the other diners in the cafe. We've been taking care of you, invited you to family dinners. At which I felt unwanted, I pointed out. Quentyn, let's not make a scene. My offer on the table is $50,000 as a loan. Do you want it or not? He looked at me with hatred. You know what? Keep your money. We can do this without your help. But this isn't over, Mom. You're going to regret what you did. With those words, he jumped up from the table and ran out of the cafe, leaving a confused Howard to collect the papers. I'm sorry, the lawyer mumbled. He's very upset. I understand. I nodded. Tell him my offer still stands. If he changes his mind, have him contact my lawyer. I gave Howard Patterson's card and finished my coffee before I left the cafe. Back in my new apartment, I stood at the panoramic window for a while, looking out at the river. The confrontation with Quentyn had left a strange feeling, a mixture of sadness and release. I knew I was being harsh, but I also realized it was necessary. For too long, I'd allowed myself to be manipulated. For too long, I'd put his needs before mine. A few days later, Patterson called. "Mrs. Bambridge, I got a letter from your son's lawyer. They're threatening to sue, claiming that there was a verbal agreement to transfer the house and that your actions were malicious." "What are their chances?" I asked calmly. "Frankly, minimal. Without documents or witnesses to prove such an agreement, it would be their word against yours. And considering that the house was always registered to you and they paid rent even if symbolic, the court is likely to side with you. What do you suggest?" "I would send a formal response pointing out that there is no legal basis for their claim and reiterating your loan offer. This will show the court, if it comes to it, that you acted reasonably and tried to find a compromise." "Go ahead," I agreed. Over the next few weeks, I was completely absorbed in settling into my new life. My apartment in Riverside Plaza was slowly transforming: new furniture, paintings on the walls, bookshelves filled with my favorite tomes. I started taking yoga classes for seniors at the fitness center in the complex and enrolled in photography classes, a hobby I had once shared with Gordon but had abandoned after his death. Eunice became a frequent visitor to my new home. We planned a trip to Japan, studied guidebooks, watched documentaries about Japanese culture. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, with plans and dreams beyond the daily grind. There was no news from Quentyn, although Patterson reported that threats of legal action had not developed. Apparently, Howard had convinced my son of the futility of that path. It's been 3 months since I sold the house. My new life in Riverside Plaza had become stable and comfortable. Every morning, I woke up to the sunrise streaming through the panoramic windows, illuminating the spacious bedroom. I had breakfast on the balcony, watching the river streetcars and pleasure boats, then yoga or swimming in the complex's pool, lunch with new acquaintances, afternoon reading or working on photos. I learned about Quentyn and his family mostly through Eunice, who had kept in touch with mutual acquaintances from our former neighborhood. According to her, the eviction was not easy for them. "They got an apartment in Lakeview," Eunice told me over a cup of tea in my living room. "Much more modest than that house, of course. Quentyn had told Margaret Johnson it was temporary until they found something suitable, but it had been 3 months." I nodded, not showing much emotion. Lakeview wasn't a bad neighborhood, though not as upscale as their old place. "What about the kids?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Olivia seemed to have transferred to a new school. Derek still went to the old one. Quentyn drove him every morning. I imagined those daily trips. An extra hour in traffic there and back, gas costs. It's inconvenient, but bearable. Not the disaster Quentyn painted the last time we met." "You know what the best part is?" Eunice continued, refilling the tea. "They tell everyone that they've decided to sell the house because it's become too big for them. Nobody but their closest friends know the truth. It was predictable. Quentyn has always cared about his image in the community. To admit that their mother had evicted them from their home meant a loss of face. But of course their lifestyle has changed," Eunice added. "No more barbecues for neighbors, no more parties with coworkers. Hope has unsubscribed from all the clubs and communities in that neighborhood. They say she's very worried." I felt no schadenfreude at this news. Just quiet satisfaction that Quentyn and Hope were finally facing the consequences of their actions. They were used to living beyond their means, relying on my support. Now they had to learn self-reliance. The next day, I visited the office of Fidelity Trust Management. It was a solid firm with an impeccable reputation, specializing in the creation and management of trust funds. Mrs. Bambridge, Jeremy Wilcox, a senior account executive, greeted me. "It's good to see you again. Our lawyers have prepared the documents according to your wishes." He laid out folders of paperwork on the table. 2 separate trust funds in the names of Olivia and Derek Bambridge, each in the amount of $100,000. The funds become available to the beneficiaries when they reach the age of 25, and solely for the purpose of paying for education or starting their own business. Until then, the funds are managed by our company, with annual reporting to you. "What about anonymity?" I asked. "It is fundamentally important. Fully secured, Wilcox nodded. The beneficiaries will only learn of the existence of the foundations when they reach a specified age, and even then the identity of the founder will remain confidential unless you choose to disclose it. I read each document carefully, asked a few clarifying questions, and signed where required. $200,000 was a considerable sum, but I could afford it. Despite my conflict with Quentyn, I didn't want my grandchildren to suffer. This trust fund was my way of taking care of them without letting their parents manipulate me or misuse the money. Excellent, Wilcox said as he gathered up the signed documents. The funds will be activated by the end of the week, and the funds will be transferred to the appropriate accounts. Thank you for your help. I shook his hand and left the office with a sense of accomplishment. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Olivia. It was the first time someone from Quentyn's family had contacted me directly since the conflict. Grandma? Her voice sounded unsure. It's me, Olivia. Hello, darling, I answered, trying to hide my surprise. How are you? I'm fine, she paused. Yeah, I need to ask you something. Of course you do. Is it true you sold our house because Dad told you to get out? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I didn't expect Quentyn to tell the kids the truth. That's part of the truth, I answered cautiously. The situation was more complicated. Dad says you're getting back at him, that you've always been stingy and controlling. I took a deep breath, holding back the first impulse to defend myself. Your father is entitled to his opinion. We each have our own version of what happened. Mom cries every night, Olivia continued. Derek's gotten worse in school. I lost all my friends because I moved to a different school. I'm sorry you've had to go through this change, I said sincerely. I offered to help you find a new place to live, but your father refused. He says you offered humiliating terms. I offered an interest-free loan. Many people would consider that a generous offer. There was a pause. I could hear Olivia breathing into the phone, apparently thinking about what I'd said. You know, she said finally, when we lived in that house, you and Dad were always fighting about money. He was always asking you for one thing or another. I thought it was normal, that all families were like that. Her powers of observation surprised me. I always thought Olivia was so absorbed in her phone that she didn't notice what was going on around her. And now? I asked. And now we're learning to live within our means, she said, pride suddenly evident in her voice. I got a part-time job at a cafe after school. Dad doesn't buy expensive things for nothing anymore. Even Derek sold some of his game consoles. I didn't know what to say. It was the last thing I expected. That my act, intended as a lesson to Quentyn, might actually benefit the whole family. I'm not calling to ask for money, if that's what you're thinking, Olivia added hastily. I just wanted to get your side of the story, and to tell you that I'm not mad at you. Not that we're best friends now, but I understand why you did it. Thank you, Olivia, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. It means a lot to me. I have to go. Her voice was back to the detached, typical teenage voice. Bye, Grandma. Goodbye, dear. After that conversation, I sat at the window for a long time, looking out at the sparkling lights of the city. Perhaps my action, for all its harshness, had given Quentyn's family a chance to reevaluate their priorities. Perhaps it would benefit them in the long run, though of course it's unlikely Quentyn will ever see the situation in that light. Spring turned to summer. I became more and more involved in the Riverside Plaza community and neighboring neighborhoods. On Eunice's recommendation, I joined the Silver Activists, an organization of seniors involved in community service and advocacy. We need people like you, Freda, said Eleanor Marshall, the group's 72-year-old founder, after our first meeting. With a background in finance and a strong character. Too often seniors are seen as helpless and disempowered. We are changing that perception. The group met twice a week at a nearby community center. We discussed legislative initiatives affecting seniors, organized educational seminars on financial literacy for seniors, and held actions against age discrimination. One day, after a regular meeting, I was approached by Roland Pierce, a 78-year-old former economics professor who had recently joined the group. Mrs. Bambridge, he began, slightly embarrassed. I hear you're planning a trip to Japan next spring? Yes, with my friend Eunice, I confirmed. Why? You see, I taught Japanese economics for 20 years and have been to Japan several times. Perhaps I could give some useful advice. Over a cup of coffee, for example? I looked at him carefully. A tall, trim man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and lively blue eyes. He reminded me of Gordon. The same restraint, the same intellectual dignity. I'd love to, I agreed. How about tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the Café La Comca on the embankment? Excellent, he smiled. I'll look forward to it. That was how Roland came into my life, first as a pleasant conversationalist, then as a friend with whom we shared an interest in travel, photography, and classical music. We took things slow, enjoying each other's company without pressure or expectation. Meanwhile, the lives of Quentyn and his family gradually stabilized. According to Eunice, they were no longer planning to return to their old neighborhood, but were looking for a place to live close to Olivia's new school, which turned out to have a strong music program. The girl unexpectedly discovered a talent for playing the cello and spent hours at the instrument on loan from the school. Derek, after an initial period of rebellion, also adapted. He started playing less computer games and more sports, joining the school swim team. Quentyn was proud of his son's progress and never missed his competitions. Hope, ironically, got a promotion at work. She became a department manager at her call center, which greatly improved their financial situation. Quentyn was still working at the logistics company, although he was rumored to be considering a career change. I watched these changes without gloating, but also without much regret for what I had done. Life was moving on, and it seemed that even something as dramatic as losing my home could eventually lead to positive change. In September, I received a strange package, a small box with no return address. Inside was a neatly wrapped pearl brooch in the shape of a starfish and a note. Grandma, thank you for the lessons in financial independence. I got a job at a jewelry store. This is my first completely independent gift. Olivia. I held the brooch in my hands for a long time, examining the minute details. It was inexpensive, perhaps even costume jewelry, but it was more valuable to me than any diamonds. It was the first sincere gift from my granddaughter in years. By November, Eunice and I had fully planned our trip to Japan. 2 weeks in April, when the cherry blossoms are in bloom, Tokyo, Kyoto, Nara, Hiroshima, Hakone Hot Springs. Roland helped put together the itinerary, including several places not included in the standard tourist programs. You should definitely visit Ryoanji Temple in Kyoto, he said, showing pictures of the famous rock garden. And take a whole day to visit the Narimazu museums in Tokyo. And be sure to try real ramen at small street food stalls, not touristy restaurants. His enthusiasm was infectious. I even started learning the basics of Japanese through online courses, the simple phrases a traveler needs. In December, Silver activists organized a charity fair to raise funds for programs to support lonely seniors during the holiday season. I was in charge of the financial portion, overseeing the budget and expenses. The event was a great success, raising almost twice as much money as planned. You are a real treasure, Freda, Eleanor said at the dinner after the fair. How did we manage without you before? Those words warmed my soul. For the first time in many years, I felt truly needed and valued, not just as a source of financial support, but as a person with knowledge, experience, and abilities that could benefit others. I welcomed the new year in the company of new friends, Roland, Eleanor, several other Silver activist members, and of course, Eunice. We gathered in my apartment, admired the fireworks over the river, and raised our glasses to health and new adventures. To Japan, Eunice proclaimed as the clock struck midnight. To new beginnings at any age, Roland added, looking at me warmly. To the freedom to be yourself, I said, tears of happiness welling up in my eyes. In January, while looking through the local newspaper, I came across a small article about a school competition for young musicians. Among the finalists was Olivia Bambridge, a cellist. The concert was to be held a week later at the town theater. I pondered for a long time whether to go. Quentyn would probably be there and the encounter could be awkward. On the other hand, I wanted to support my granddaughter to see her perform. On the day of the concert, I took a seat in the last row of the stalls, hoping to go unnoticed. The theater was full. Parents, teachers, friends of young musicians. Olivia was the sixth performer. When she came on stage in a simple black dress, cello in hand, I hardly recognized her. Where was the sullen teenage girl always staring at her cell phone? In front of me stood a young lady with a straight back and a focused gaze. She was playing Saint-Saëns' The Swan, a piercingly beautiful melody filled with sadness and hope at the same time. I was no expert in classical music, but even my inexperienced ear picked up that Olivia played with feeling, with soul. When she finished, the hall erupted in applause. I applauded with everyone, proud of my granddaughter. After the concert, I quietly slipped out of the auditorium, not wanting to create an awkward situation for Quentyn's family. But at the exit of the theater, I was suddenly called, "Grandma!" I turned around. Olivia, still in her concert dress, her cello in its case behind her, was hurrying toward me. "You came," she said, stopping at arm's length. "I wasn't sure you knew about the concert." "I read it in the paper," I replied. "You played beautifully, darling. I'm very proud of you." She blushed slightly at the praise. "Thank you. I've only been practicing for 5 months, but my teacher says I have potential." "I'm sure you do." We stood there, not knowing what else to say. Finally, Olivia asked, "Did you get the brooch I sent?" "Yes, it's beautiful. I wore it today." I pointed to the lapel of my coat where the pearl starfish glittered. Olivia smiled sincerely, without a trace of teenage sarcasm. "Daddy's here," she said suddenly. "He's standing by the closet with Mom and Derek." "I know," I nodded. "That's why I was going to leave without saying goodbye. I don't want to make your day awkward." "I understand," she said quietly. "He's still mad. He says he'll never forgive you." "That's his right," I said calmly. "We all make our own choices." "I'm not angry," Olivia said suddenly. I think. I think sometimes you have to lose something to realize its value, or to find something new." She stroked the cello case. "If we hadn't moved, I never would have gone to this school and started playing." The wisdom in the words of a 16-year-old girl struck me. "You've grown up a lot, Olivia." "I have to go." She looked back at the closet entrance. "They'll be looking for me." "Sure, go." I took a step back. "And congratulations again on a great performance." She nodded, but didn't leave. "Grandma, maybe I could call you sometimes? Just to talk?" "I'd be very happy to," I replied, feeling my heart grow warm. "Then I'll see you later." She waved her hand and ran to the closet where her family was waiting for her. I watched her go, realizing that maybe all was not lost. Perhaps my radical act had ruined my relationship with my son, but opened the way to a new, healthier relationship with my granddaughter. Spring brought cherry blossoms to Japan and Eunice and me to Tokyo. We flew in early April, the perfect time to admire the pink clouds of blooming trees. Roland provided us with detailed maps, restaurant recommendations, and tips on how to avoid tourist traps. The trip turned out to be exactly what I had dreamed of, full of experiences, new knowledge, and discoveries. We wandered through the ancient temples of Kyoto, admired Mount Fuji from the hot springs of Hakone, tasted exotic dishes in small family restaurants, and photographed everything we saw. On my last day, sitting in a traditional Japanese garden in Tokyo, I reflected on my life, about the decisions that brought me here, to this peaceful corner on the other side of the world, about the people I've lost and gained, the lessons I've learned. Quentyn would never forgive me, I knew that clearly. His resentment was too deep, his ego too hurt by what I'd done. But I learned to live with that knowledge, not letting it cloud my new life. Olivia called me once every 2 weeks. We talked about her music, about school, about future plans. Sometimes she talked about her family, how Derek had won a medal in a swimming competition, how Hope had organized a charity event at work, how Quentyn had started taking web design courses, dreaming of a new career. Derek never contacted me directly, but through Olivia he sent his regards and once even sent a picture from a competition. These were small but meaningful steps. Neither of them knew about the trust funds. It was a secret I kept safely, planning to reveal it only when the time was right. My life was filled with new friends, new interests, new adventures. After Japan, Roland and I planned a trip to Italy in the fall. Rome, Florence, Venice, places I had always dreamed of but put off for later. Gordon would be pleased to see me like this, active, enthusiastic, free of the guilt and obligations that had weighed me down for so long. He always said I took on too much, gave too much to others, forgetting my own desires. Sitting in a Japanese garden, watching the cherry blossoms fall, I realized an important truth. Sometimes you have to let go of the past to find the future. Sometimes you have to lose something precious to find something priceless. Sometimes you have to close one door to open dozens of others. I didn't regret my decision to sell the house. It was tough, even cruel, but necessary. Both for me and perhaps for Quentyn's family. It shattered the illusion of prosperity based on dependency and manipulation and forced each of us to build our lives anew, on a more honest foundation. My new life was fulfilling and without a toxic relationship with my son. I was finally living for myself, traveling, learning, growing, meeting new people, and helping those who truly appreciated my help. Cherry tree petals swirled in the air, dropping to the mirrored surface of the pond. Their short-lived beauty was a reminder of how fleeting life is and how important it is to live each moment fully and consciously. I smiled, took a deep breath of the fresh spring air, and went to find Eunice. We had one last day in Tokyo ahead of us, and then it was back home and planning new adventures. Life went on, and it was beautiful in its unpredictability.